I've cut up a big calendar into strips, and I like doing this by turning it upside down so I can't see the letters and the numbers and things, and just randomly cutting it up so that I break through some of them, and the numbers and letters just become shapes. It's quite fun to sort of arrange them, and this is what I'm going to be doing in this design exercise. So I'm using a square format, and I'm just going to cut up these strips further and arrange them just to sort of make a balanced composition, setting up contrast between areas that are quite densely black and areas that are mostly white. And then I want to arrange it so that although you sort of read the numbers, they're disrupted and broken up, and they just become shapes. So that's why I've cut through them. And so that's my challenge. It takes a fair bit of fiddling around, but once I've decided on a few combinations that look good, that gives me a starting point. So I'm gluing these down with a bit of heavy gel medium, and I'm just going to see if I can create an interesting composition. Let's see how this goes. So when I'm finally done, there's sort of a hint that they're numbers, but in that 8 there, but the rest of it is fairly, they just look like shapes. And now I'm going to try a different format. So this is a long skinny one, and I'm starting with a solid dark area, and I'm going to contrast that with either a lot of white or a lot of smaller shapes to contrast that sort of large block of black. And I really like that circle coming in down there, because there needs to be something sort of big that balances with the 1 on the left hand side, and that circle is different from anything else, so it sort of does the trick. And then these little strips are just providing finer detail really in shape, so smaller, finer shapes. And then so this is the strip up against another part of a design that I've made, and it's interesting how they work together. It's quite a fun exercise. Okay, so now I'm going to do another square format, and this time I'm using large areas of, or large block of black to start with, and I want to contrast that with that small little bit of writing as well. So I'm just sort of setting that up with some large shapes, and then I'm going to bring this in somehow and contrast them with smaller shapes. So if you wanted to have a go at this and you didn't have a big calendar to cut up like I have, you could just get some sheets of paper, paint one black and keep the other one white, and then just paint in some shapes. You know, you could contrast shapes with fine lines in black or white paint, leave it to dry, turn it over, and then cut it up into the strips like I have. Once you've done a few, you can take some strips of paper and kind of block off areas to find interesting designs within your compositions. And this is what I'm doing here. I'm looking for designs that look balanced or pleasing, that sort of offer some other possibilities. And then, of course, you can butt up, because they're all black and white, you can butt up and create more designs by butting up your designs together, moving them around and putting shapes next to other shapes and seeing what works. This is a really good way of sort of fine-tuning your eye into finding interesting designs and looking for differences, which is crucial in when we come to do our paintings, because that's how we find good designs in our paintings as well. So this is a really good little homework exercise. And in my starts course, one of the first things I do is to get my students to do an exercise that involves doing this, because it's a really good way of looking for differences and sort of fine-tuning your eye. So what you're looking is how some shapes can link with each other and how some shapes contrast with other shapes. So large against small, fine against fat, open areas against cluttered areas, those sorts of contrasts. So what are we looking for to make interesting designs? And often it's not until we start moving things around and playing with different shapes and looking at different options that we see. Sometimes we can see a repetition of shape that, like I've seen one in the middle of that bottom piece, and here's another one. And these can be good to link, but they can also be something you might want to disrupt, because basically repetition is the opposite to a difference.